The president now answering reporters' questions in Manchester, New Hampshire, just landed there. Let's listen in.
China, they haven't bitten into us at all, except for the reporters that want to make it look that way, but they don't understand what's happening. The tariffs, we've taken in close to $60 billion in tariff money, and the consumer has not paid for them. Now, at some point, they may have to pay something, but they understand that, and who really understands that is our great farmer. The farmers of this country really understand it. They know we had to do something about China, and we're doing something about China. With that being said, I think we're having very good discussions with China. They very much want to make a deal. We'll see what happens. We had a deal, and they decided not to make it. Now I think they would like to have had that opportunity again, because I think they really would. I think they really missed a great opportunity. I think they feel that they missed a great opportunity. But China very much wants to make a deal. We're talking to them. We'll see what happens, yeah.
But why did you feel the need to get involved in the two congresswomen's trip to Israel?
Well, I'm only involved from the standpoint of they are very anti-Jewish and they're very anti-Israel. I think it's disgraceful, the things they've said. You have lists of, this isn't just a one-line mistake. What they've said about Israel and Jewish people is a horrible thing, and they've become the face of the Democrat Party. So I did absolutely put out a very strong statement. I think if you look at their language, if you look at what they've said, if I ever said it, it would be a horrible month, to put it mildly. So the things that they've said, Omar, Tlaib, what they've said is disgraceful. So I can't imagine why Israel would let them in. But if they want to let them in, they can, but I can't imagine why they would do it.
Are you worried that a prolonged trade war with China will pitch the economy into a recession?
No, I think the longer the trade war goes on, the weaker China gets and the stronger we get. We're taking in massive amounts of money, billions and billions of dollars, Steve, as you know. And I think the longer it goes, the stronger we get. I have a feeling it's going to go fairly short. I think it's going to be, China's lost millions of jobs. You saw that reported today. Thousands of companies are closing in China. And I don't know, maybe they want to do this for a year. They'd love to have somebody like Biden who doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, I just put a clip where he said, we want to build up China. We want to build up China. Well, they gave us a very strong China. China's taken out over $500 billion a year for many years from our country. And that's not going to happen anymore.
How concerned are you, let me just follow up, sorry.
Sure,
How concerned are you about a violent crackdown by the Chinese in Hong Kong?
Well, I am concerned. I wouldn't want to see a violent crackdown. I put a little bit of a memo out last night. He's a man I like a lot. I get along with him very well, President Xi. And I said that I would be willing to bet that if he sat down with the protesters, a group of representative protesters, I'll bet he'd work it out in 15 minutes. I bet he'd work it out very quickly. I know it's not the kind of thing he does, but I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. I really believe if he sat down, they have a certain little leadership pool. If he sat down with that leadership pool, I'll bet he'd work something out very quickly. It really seems like things that could be worked out pretty easily.
Did you speak with Prime Minister Netanyahu about the Congresswoman?
I don't want to comment about who I spoke to, but I think my social media statement pretty well speaks for itself. I feel that they are so anti-Israel, so anti-Jewish. Again, if other people made that statement, there would have been hell to pay. So, but I did speak to people over there, yeah.
Sir, China has said that they want to retaliate, that they're going to retaliate because of the tariffs increase that you announced. What's your response to that?
Well, if they did retaliate, which I don't think they will do because we're talking to them and they're offering things that are very good, I don't think they'll retaliate. But if they did, we have the ultimate form of retaliation. I think they'd have very few jobs left in China because we'd be able to step it up. Just so you understand, I've been very mild about it. Very, very mild. There's a long way I can go. And somebody had to take on what was happening with China. We can't allow China to take out of our country $507 billion every year, not including intellectual property theft and so many other things. So we're having very good talks with China. I think things will happen, but we'll see.
If they do retaliate, will you want your team to meet with them in September as planned or no?
Well, that's true. Look, September, the meeting is still on as I understand it. But I think more importantly than September, we're talking by phone and we're having very productive talks. They would like to do something. I will tell you that. And the talk we had a few days ago with my two representatives. Nobody knew what was on that talk except for myself, China, and those two people. That was a very good conversation.
You want Jay Powell to cut interest rates some more?
Jay Powell should be cutting rates because every country all over the world is cutting, and we want to stay sort of even. And I don't mind if we're higher, we're better, we're a better credit, but we're way too high. Jay Powell's made a big mistake. He raised them too fast, and he also quantitative tightened. He did quantitative tightening. That was a big mistake. $50 billion a month, and it put us in a position. And interestingly, even with normalized interest rates, President Obama was paying nothing, and we have a much better economy. And you have to look at our economy also from the day after my election, because we picked up tremendous steam the day after the election. That's not attributable to President Obama. They only did that because of us. So when somebody says from January 20th, it's not from January 20th. It's from November 9th, the day after the election. We picked up. The fact that I won lifted our economy greatly. And if I didn't win, it would go down. And frankly, if for some reason that happened in the 2020 election, you'll see this economy go down the tubes. I will tell you that right now.
Mr. President, do you have any idea on when China's going to follow through on their ag purchases and crack down on fentanyl?
They want to follow through very quickly. This was part of the conversation that we had. They had a special representative actually come over and talk to us, a different group, and a message to me, a very strong message to me. They want to start doing that very quickly. I'll be honest, I'm not there yet.
Did you tell Israel?
It's not China. I'm not there yet. We'll see what happens. I really would like to see China in a humane way solve the problem in Hong Kong. Humanely solve the problem in Hong Kong. And I think they could do it very quickly. You know, I said yesterday, I really have a lot of confidence in President Xi. I know that if he sat down with their representatives, I have no doubt he would solve that problem quickly.
In your conversations with people connected to Israel, did you encourage them to reject the Congress?
No, I don't encourage or discourage. I think that if Israel allowed them to come in for the normal reasons, other than those reasons, I really believe that it would be a terrible thing for Israel. I think it would show a terrible sign. They want to do boycotts. They said horrible things about Jewish people. They said horrible things about Israel and Israelis. I think it would be a terrible thing, frankly, for Israel to let these two people who speak so badly about Israel come in. And they have become, amazingly, the face of the Democrats. The Democrats don't want to do anything to condemn them. If this were 10 years ago, or if this were maybe a different time or different people or whatever, they would be condemned for the things they've said. They've said some of the worst things I've ever heard said about Israel. So how can Israel say, oh, welcome? I don't think it would be a good thing for Israel.
Mr. President, do you think that Steve King needs to resign?
I don't know the situation with Steve King. It looked like I read a statement that supposedly he made. I haven't been briefed on it, but certainly it wasn't a very good statement.
So you're going to go to the G7 pretty soon, and I think you're going to meet with Boris Johnson. Are you going to have some sort of declaration about the intent to seal a trade deal with him, with the Britons?
So we're dealing with the UK on trade and a trade deal, and we're going to have a great deal made. I've been dealing with Boris Johnson. I just spoke to him yesterday. I'll speak to him again. He and I are very much aligned. We feel very good about each other. I think we'll make a fantastic and big trade deal with the UK. Actually, we should do much more business than we're doing with the UK. You know, it's they're probably, I don't want to say our closest because I don't want to insult other people, but certainly, or countries, but certainly they're one of our closest allies anywhere in the world. And we're going to have a fantastic relationship with UK, and we're going to have a great trade deal with UK. And that's moving along rapidly.
Any other goals for the G7, sir?
I think just relationship. We'll see what happens. We have a lot of things to discuss. A lot of things to discuss.
Is Corey going to announce tonight?
I don't know. Corey Lewandowski, I think, would be terrific if he ran, but I don't know that he's going to run. I spoke to him about it a week ago. Frankly, I think it's something he'd like to do, but I don't know that he's going to do it. I think he'd be very good. He loves New Hampshire. He loves our country. If he did it, I think it'd be very formidable.
What executive action are you prepared to take on guns?
we're going to look at that very closely, and we're looking at the whole gun situation. I do want people to remember the words mental illness. These people are mentally ill, and nobody talks about that. But these are mentally ill people, and people have to start thinking about it. I think we have to start building institutions again because, you know, if you look at the 60s and 70s, so many of these institutions were closed, and the people were just allowed to go onto the streets. And that was a terrible thing for our country. They closed them. Cities couldn't afford them, and they closed them. I mean, I can tell you in New York, they closed a lot of them. And the people went out. They went out onto the streets, and it's a terrible thing. But a lot of our conversation has to do with the fact that we have to open up institutions. We can't let these people be on the streets. So we have a tremendous crowd in New Hampshire. It's all over the place. Everybody's saying, wow. Our competitor has virtually no crowd. I don't know what that means. I assume that's a poll of some kind. But I think we're going to do very well in New Hampshire. New Hampshire should have been won last time, except we had a lot of people come in at the last moment, which was a rather strange situation. Thousands and thousands of people coming in from locations unknown, but I knew where the location was. But I think we're going to have a tremendous success in New Hampshire. These are great people, and the relationship is very good.
Do you still plan to keep Blagojevich?
We're looking at it. I feel very badly. I think he was very harshly sentenced, but we're looking at it very strongly. People feel very strongly about that. I floated it, and I wanted to see where the Democrats stood, where the Republicans stood. People feel very strongly about Rod Blagojevich and his sentence. He's been in there for 7.5 years. That's a long time. And what he did was terrible, but it's a long time. It's a long time.
Are you pushing Mitch McConnell on background checks?
I've been dealing with Mitch McConnell. He's a man who we have had tremendous success with judges and judicial appointments. We're going to be up to 179 federal judges within the next 2 months. Nobody would have believed that's possible. And that was because President Obama was unable to get them completed. So I inherited about 138 empty seats. Nobody can believe it. And we will have them almost all filled with tremendous judges and tremendously talented, smart people. They'll be filled within 2 months. So I have 179 judges and 2 Supreme Court justices. That's something that nobody would have ever thought possible. I want to thank very much President Obama for that.
I was asking about background checks for gun owners, for gun purchasers.
Yeah, we do. I've been speaking to Mitch about that. I've been speaking to everybody about it. And we don't want to see crazy people owning guns. But I also want to remember that mental illness is something nobody wants to talk about. These people are mentally ill, and we have to study that also. Because, you know, it's them. They pull the trigger. The gun doesn't pull the trigger. They pull the trigger. So we have to look very seriously at mental illness, and we're doing that at a level that hasn't been done before. Okay?
Are there other Republicans you're speaking with, Mr. President, besides the Senate Majority Leader and Pat Toomey? Is there anyone else who you're talking to?
To many Republicans. And I'll tell you, it's been an amazing experience. They want to see something happen. And basically, it's very simple. They don't want to have insane people, dangerous people, really bad people having guns. Republicans agree with me on that. I think, I would say pretty much uniformly.
Do you think this will be easy to do when the Senate comes back?
I'm afraid that if we came up with a good bill, I think the Democrats then might up it and then do things that can't be done and that the public wouldn't want done. I hope that wouldn't happen, but that's happened in the past. You understand.
Can you support universal background checks?
I support strong, meaningful background checks where people that should not have guns, people that are insane, people that are mentally ill, people that are bad people, like this guy in Philadelphia who's been arrested numerous times. He's a bad guy, where people like that would not have guns. And frankly, people like that should be locked up. He shouldn't have even been on the streets. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did you talk to Xi directly? Was that who you talked to in China?
I will speak to him. We have a call scheduled soon, President Xi. We'll be speaking to him very soon. I really believe he can work it out. I know him well. If he wants to, he can work that out in a very humane fashion. He can work something that everybody's happy. Thank you.
want to meet him.
All right, so we just heard the president on several important issues. He's in Morristown, New Jersey, getting ready to fly to Manchester, New Hampshire. Our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, is in Manchester, where the president's going to be attending a large rally there once again tonight. Jim, we heard the president go off on several important issues, including, once again, attacking those Democratic congresswomen after causing a political firestorm earlier in the day by publicly, on a tweet, urging the Israeli government to ban them from entering into the country.
That's right, Wolf. And you heard the president say just a few moments ago to reporters that he did talk to the Israelis about supporting this idea on the part of the Israeli government to bar those two representatives, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, from traveling to Israel in the coming days. The president did not want to get into whether or not he told the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to not let them into the country. But we've heard the president in the past at these rallies go after the lawmakers known as the Squad. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he does that here in Manchester, New Hampshire later on this evening, where he's holding a rally here. But make no mistake, the president made it very clear just a few moments ago, if those lawmakers travel to Israel, he wants the Israeli government to send them back. President Trump is reigniting his culture war with the Democratic Congresswoman of color known as the Squad. The president is now supporting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to block Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib from entering Israel, tweeting, "It would show great weakness if Israel allowed Representative Omar and Representative Tlaib to visit. They hate Israel and all Jewish people, and there is nothing that can be said or done to change their minds. They are a disgrace." But that's not true. The congresswomen have never said they hate Israel and all Jewish people. The president's tweet came just before a statement from Netanyahu laying out his reason to bar the congresswomen, saying their plan is only to damage Israel and to foment against Israel. Before the president's tweet, the White House denied Mr. Trump was urging Netanyahu to ban the congresswomen, saying that was inaccurate. Democrats are railing against the move.
It's an insult to the American people. Representative Tlaib and Representative Omar are equal members of the United States Congress.
It's Mr. Trump's latest attack on Omar after some of his supporters chanted she should be sent back to her native country of Somalia at a rally last month.
And obviously and importantly, Omar has a history of launching vicious anti-Semitic screeds. And she talked about the evil Israel, and it's all about the Benjamins. Not a good thing to say.
In response to Israel's decision, Omar fired back, saying in a statement, "The irony of the only democracy in the Middle East making such a decision is that it is both an insult to democratic values and a chilling response to a visit by government officials from an allied nation." Both Omar and Tlaib, who is Palestinian-American, have drawn criticism for supporting a movement to boycott Israel over some of its policies.
I can tell you they're all around college campuses. There are Jews, Muslims, Hindus, all different kinds of backgrounds who are pushing back against racist policies in Israel because they see that the human rights violations of children being detained, the fact that my grandmother who lives in the West Bank right now does not have equality. She doesn't have freedom of travel.
But even the powerful pro-Israel lobby AIPAC opposes Netanyahu's decision, saying, "We believe every member of Congress should be able to visit and experience our Democratic ally, Israel, firsthand." Democrats say the president's push for Israel to ban the congresswoman is nothing more than a distraction from a wobbly week on Wall Street that raised concerns a recession could be on the horizon.
We saw him go off the rails yesterday. Now today it's this. It'll be something tomorrow, and the more the heat gets cranked up and the more this economy softens, the less he's going to be able to keep his stuff together.
One thing to remember about the president's attacks on the Squad, they are tactical. I talked to a Republican advisor close to the president earlier today who said if Democrats are going to link the Republicans to Congressman Steve King, they are going to link Democrats to the Squad. And Wolf, one thing we should also point out in the president's comments just a few moments ago to reporters as he was on his way here to New Hampshire, the president once again raised this false conspiracy theory that thousands of people voted illegally here in New Hampshire in the 2016 election. There is no evidence of that. That is another one of those unproven conspiracy theories that the president likes to spread around. Wolf.
All right, we'll monitor what's going on where you are. Jim Acosta in Manchester, New Hampshire, the president on his way there for a big political rally later tonight. Joining us now, Pennsylvania Democratic Representative Madeleine Dean, who's a member of the Judiciary Committee. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Wolf.
Well, let me just get your reaction to what we just heard from the president. First of all, he bitterly went after these two Democratic congresswomen, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and he applauded this decision by the Israeli government, which he clearly encouraged to prevent them from coming to Israel this Sunday. What's your reaction to that?
Imagine what the president said of these women, that they hate Israel and all Jewish people. That's an extraordinary lie, and the president should be ashamed and should take it back. I happen to have just come from 8 days in Israel. It's a country and a people that could not be more welcoming, and I would hope that the president would be embarrassed and apologize for his urging of Prime Minister Netanyahu to bar the women from coming. These are equal members of Congress. They are part of our congressional delegation, and Israel is one of our most important allies in the world, a democracy, a partner, a friend. It's an extraordinary bad move by our president, and it's an unmistakably bad move by Prime Minister Netanyahu. It also is such an undermining of the exact thing that Israel should want to do and what they wanted to do when they toured us. About 41 members of the Democratic caucus and then another 30 Republican members came in about a day and a half as we were on our way out. They want to show us the beauty and the richness of its place and its people. Why would you want to bar two duly elected members of Congress? It's wrong-headed by our president in extraordinarily dangerous ways, and it's, I think, a mistake by Prime Minister Netanyahu.
So what is your specific message to Prime Minister Netanyahu? I know you and your fellow members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, had a chance to meet with him when you were there.
We were there. We did have a chance to meet with him and listen to his presentation to us, and he took about an hour and a half's worth of questions of us. But he knows very, very well. He was educated in my district, as you know. He was graduated from Cheltenham High School, and I reminded him of our neighborhood. And so he knows very, very well that these are two duly elected members of Congress. And actually, he wants to sell his country and the beauty of his country. Let these women in so they can learn more about the beauty of that country. Recognize also, one of these women, her grandmother, a Palestinian woman, lives there. It's just an extraordinary obstruction by the Prime Minister, and I think it's a real mistake.
Well, let me read to you what Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, a Palestinian-American, tweeted earlier today, and she tweeted a picture of her grandmother who lives on the West Bank. The decision by Israel to bar her granddaughter, a U.S. Congresswoman, is a sign of weakness because the truth of what is happening to Palestinians is frightening. So what's your reaction to the statements made by Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar?
Well, and I'm just learning it from you. I had not read or heard those statements. I can understand they would be gravely disappointed and shocked, frankly, at two world leaders, our own president and the Prime Minister, from trying to ban them from coming in. As I said, have them come in. Let them learn of the richness of this country and its peoples, its multiple peoples. That's where I see an extraordinary mistake. There's nothing to hide here. Let's take a look. Let the Congresswomen in.
Let's get to another sensitive issue right now. Your Judiciary Committee has just issued subpoenas for former Trump campaign chairman Corey Lewandowski and former senior White House aide Rick Dearborn. How important is their testimony on this whole issue of obstruction of justice?
I think it's very important. You know that we have gone to court to compel Mr. McGahn to come forward. He's going to be critically important. He was counsel to the president. But then Lewandowski, if you remember the timeline, we're talking June of 2017. About June 14th, the president learned that now the special counsel was going to be expanding his investigation because of evidence of obstruction of justice by the president. That's June the 14th, 2017. 3 days later, the president meets with Lewandowski, who is not a staffer. He was campaign. He is not a White House staffer. Meets with him in the Oval Office and issues a message that he is to deliver to Jeff Sessions to restrict the special counsel's investigation. and it should only look to the future, not to the past. And then 2 days later, on the 19th, he talks to Lewandowski again, and he wants to know what has happened. Have you committed that message to Mr. Sessions? So it's a constant attempt to interfere, trying to use an outside person in Lewandowski to get a message to Sessions to either unrecuse or reduce and limit the investigation. Remember, Sessions had recused himself. We also subpoenaed Mr. Dearborn because then Lewandowski, uncomfortable with the message delivery to Sessions, says to Dearborn, will you deliver the message to Mr. Sessions? So there's an awful lot of tampering and obstruction going on there that is evidenced in the Mueller report. So Mr. Lewandowski and Mr. Dearborn's testimony and facts will be important.
As you correctly point out, Corey Lewandowski never served in the government, never served in the Trump administration. No. He worked in the campaign before that. So what's your reaction when you hear that the White House is considering invoking executive privilege to prevent him from testifying before your Judiciary Committee?
Well, it's very much like some of the legal claims that they have falsely made in other areas. It just simply does not apply. He cannot invoke executive privilege. He will attempt to. We've seen the obstructive behavior by this president of our duty of oversight. We've had to go to court, and I really have great confidence and faith in our courts that they will uphold our ability to compel people to come on in and testify. And so I can imagine the president will try it again. He will have the help of Attorney General Barr, as we have seen. So it's very troubling times. And I have to tell you, I'm back here in my district, and it's nice to be back in the district. But I have to tell you what my constituents say to me. Make sure you complete your duty of oversight. Make sure you get the facts to us. Continue your impeachment investigation through the judiciary and bring the facts to the American people.
Let me also, while I have you, Congresswoman, get your thoughts on yesterday's dramatic shootout in Philadelphia, in your neighboring district. You were at the news conference earlier this afternoon in Philadelphia. Yeah. The mayor of Philadelphia gave a rather impassioned plea for gun control. Listen to what he said last night.
Our officers need help. They need help. They need help with gun control. They need help with keeping these weapons out of these people's hands. And if the state and federal government don't want to stand up to the NRA and some other folks, then let us police ourselves. But they preempt us on all kinds of gun control legislation. Our officers deserve to be protected, and they don't deserve to be shot at by a guy for hours with an unlimited supply of weapons and an unlimited supply of bullets.
The shooter, as you know, had this AR-15 style rifle. You just heard the president say, I support strong, meaningful background checks. What needs to happen right now?
And you heard the president not say universal background checks. He wants to have some Swiss cheese version of background checks, and I hope we don't allow that to happen. I was at the press conference today, and I think your reporting showed it's a miracle that this man with an assault-style weapon sitting in a house where there were hostages held and 2 police officers held up in that location was able to shoot 6 police officers, and fortunately, not one died. In fact, all were treated and released last night. It's extraordinary what the police force did in bringing everybody to safety, including the hostages, including the 2 police officers who for hours were in that house, and also, of course, the shooter. They were determined to protect everyone's safety, even the shooter. So it could have ended so much worse, and it didn't. What do we need to do? The Senate needs to come back now. They should have acted on the bills that we passed in February. We passed 2 background check bills, 1 universal background check and 1 to close the Charleston loophole. That's more than 160 days ago. And so I call the Senate to come back. They've been on recess since February, as far as I can tell. The American people have suffered gun violence day after day after day. What Mayor Kenney pointed out today was, of course, commended the police officers and the Commissioner Ross. But he also said, guess what? The police then last night responded to yet another shooting. A 20-year-old male shot in the head, later declared dead. This is a problem of too many guns, illegal guns, assault weapons on our streets, in our cities, in our suburbs, and in our rural areas. This is America's uniquely grievous problem. The Senate needs to come back and pass our 2 bills, and I'm committed on the Judiciary Committee. We're committed. We were on a phone call today to coming back and marking up more bills. I want to have among them an assault weapons ban. We need to put that back in place. There's no reason we should have assault weapons on the streets of this country. Think of the children. There were children held up very close by yesterday for hours from a daycare center. Think of those children and the trauma that this daily gun violence puts our children through. The Senate needs to act. It's very sad that they're not.
Representative Madeleine Dean, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Wolf.
All right, let's